Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the Live Draft Assistant, Free Agent Finder, and Lineup Optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. Paid contests coming to a state near you across this glorious land of the United States of America. Giving out boosts, slashing lines, bonuses, all kinds of fun stuff all day long. Check it out. Enter some player prop DFS contests. It's a real fun platform over there. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 159 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. And we've got UFC Macau this weekend.
Break out the red panties.
A special administrative region of China is Macau. 13 fights on this card, and folks, in other MMA action this week, there's LFA 197 on Friday. There is Cage Warriors 181, Brave CF 90, Aries FC 27. PFL is next week. But anyway, and then, like after this week, we got a UFC hiatus. So take it all in while you can. But folks, for my picks on all of that kind of stuff and more, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Look out for my MMA DFS value picks articles that comes out on Friday afternoons. Maybe I'll try to line up an interlude episode for next week, since we're going to be on a 1-week break from the UFC before UFC 310. Just starting to wrap up the UFC for 2024. And speaking of which, real quick recap of last week. The Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano fight was awesome, even though it probably wasn't the right victor on the judges' scorecards. The Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight was a real bummer, like after the second round especially. But, that's what you get for tuning in, why... I think that's what everybody expected. They sell you on the hope of that being like some crazy thing. But, just after round 2 and Mike looked tired, that was just a bummer. And then UFC 309. Obviously an event that got some political backlash. Honestly, the card had good fights. But honestly, that main card was kind of underwhelming. I was kind of surprised by the Chandler Oliveira fight went the way that it did. There were some good fights, but the main event actually, of all things, kind of sucked the life out of it. John Jones should have looked better. This event is now kind of marred by what is John Jones going to do next? Anything short of fighting Tom Aspinall next is gonna cause riots in the streets. So I don't know. I was surprised. I thought that I was going to be like all of the other stuff aside, I thought I was going to be really excited for that event, and I was. It just kind of fell flat in a way that I didn't expect. So anyway, we got 13 fights for UFC Macau. We got Jan squared at the top of the card. We got the Road to UFC Championships on this card. So let's get right into it. Starting off, a lightweight match between Maheshate Hayaser and Nicholas Mata. Nicholas Mata is the... Nicholas Mata is the plus 165 underdog. Maheshate, the minus 190 favorite. Maheshate, I don't know why. A guy that, I feel like I used to give... Or I feel like I had negative sentiments on. But really, considering he's won 2 of his last 4 fights since arriving in the UFC, a win over Steve Garcia in the first round, and he's coming off a split decision win over Gabriel Benitez, which was a close fight. The other 2 losses to Rafa Garcia and Vasyslav Borshev, not bad for Maheshate, really, born in 1999. Nicholas Mata, coming off a first-round knockout victory over Tom Nolan. His other wins, just from the Contender Series, Joe Lowry by unanimous decision, Cameron Van Camp outstriking him 24-15 with a first-round knockout. His losses, granted, came to Jim Miller and Manuel Torres, had the overturned fight against Trey Ogden in a fight that was just, that was not going his way. These odds seem kind of crazy to me. No, they don't. They don't. I had it in my head that Machate was the underdog. No, I think that this makes perfect sense. I think that, like, Machate as a talent, especially since he's still, relatively young, I think that this is well within his range. Nicholas Mata has kind of surprised some people before, but I think that it shows that once you get to a certain level of like Cameron Van Camp and Tom Nolan, not to take, too much. I mean, Tom Nolan's won 3 or 4, since he arrived on the Contender Series. Not against a good level of competition by any means. And Cameron Van Camp, he's 0-2 in the UFC, and one of those losses is to Andre Fiallo. So that doesn't speak well at all. I think Machate is rightfully the favorite at -190. I think he's a good value at -190. I think he probably wins this fight like 75, 80 times out of 100. I think Machate by knockout +145 is probably the way to go. Then I'd go like Machate by decision +230. And then I think nothing is wrong with -190 on the money line. I just don't like really anything about Nicholas Mata in this matchup. I just think the wins that we've seen him get, enough to hang around for sure and to get this fight on what's a pretty, big card. But just not impressed with what he's done so far. But this would be a fantastic feather in his cap. We just haven't seen him ascend past this level of competition or past, what is below this yet. So Machate, that's where I'm going with the first fight. Next up, we've got Ozzy. No, I should go off UFC stats to get the next fight. We got Zhao Long and Kong Lei at bantamweight. Zhao Long is the -137 favorite. Lei the +117 underdog. Let's start with Long Zhao, 26-9 as a professional, hailing out of China. 26 years old, ranked as the 103rd best bantamweight in the world, according to Tapology. 4 knockouts, 9 submissions, 13 decision victories. Coming off of a split decision loss at UFC Fight Night, June of 2024 to Chong Ho Lee. Got, decision victory. First of all, he comes in, through WLF Wars. I like that organization. We've seen plenty of good Chinese fighters come out of there. Previous Contender Series experience, losing to Christian Quinones by unanimous decision. 2 decision victories on road to UFC. One was a split and one was a majority. This guy can't get a unanimous decision at these points, but hell, it landed 153 combined strikes, got 2 takedowns against Shohei Nose. So, he just, it was a split decision loss to Chong Ho Lee, but he did get outstruck 84-68. They each landed 2 takedowns. Kong Lei lost to Chris Gutierrez in his UFC debut, getting outstruck 59-16. 2 takedowns for Lei, 2-0 for Chris Gutierrez. That was August of this year. And Lei, 8-1 as a professional, 33 years old. This guy came in from LFA. Had 3 fights there, 4 fights there, 5 fights there. Finished all but 2 of them. 2 knockouts, 1 submission to his record. This is a funny one. Long Zhao definitely has, the more upward mobility, for sure. I do think that Lei, it doesn't really matter which one of them is the best prospect because they're fighting on Saturday. They're not fighting, every day for the next 10 years. I think Lei +117 on the money line has to have some value just for the fact that his first UFC experience was against Chris Gutierrez. That's really valuable exposure to this level. And we have just seen the road to UFC guys struggle in this transition. I think that for that reason, a slight underdog in Lei, I think, makes plenty of sense, especially a guy with 5, LFA fights under his belt before fighting Chris Gutierrez and going the distance. But, probably the most likely, individual method of victory, I would probably say, is, Long Zhao by decision, especially, with the way that all of his recent fights have gone. That is +160. I think that this could be a split, too, and Long Zhao by split decision, actually only +450. That's wild. And if I was going to go if I was going to go a method of victory, and I don't think that you need to here, because again, I do like him as the slight underdog, but lay inside the distance is plus 350. So I do think Long Zhao probably wins this fight like 55 times out of 100, maybe 60. But I don't know. I think it's probably closer to 55, and especially when you're talking about road to UFC versus LFA experience, I think that I could blindly go, with a slight underdog in those circumstances, and I'd feel okay about it. Next up, we got a flyweight match between Loner Kavanaugh and Jose Ochoa. Ochoa is the plus 290 underdog. Kavanaugh, the minus 365 favorite. I'm going to have to use Tapology for people's professional records a lot on this one. Kavanaugh, 7-0 as a professional, hailing out of China, 25 years old, currently ranked as the 75th best flyweight fighter in the world, according to Tapology. 5 knockouts, 2 decisions to his name. Won on the Contender Series in an awesome prospect matchup this year against Antoine Ho with a first-round knockout, a highlight reel knockout back in August. This guy also, his last 4 professional fights before coming onto the Contender Series was in Cage Warriors, in which he finished 2 of those fights by knockout, the other 2 by unanimous decision. Jose Ochoa, also 7-0 as a professional. He hails from the great country of Peru, 23 years old, 6 wins by knockout, 1 by submission. He has an LFA fight to his name as well. He won that by knockout back in November, which is also his most recent fight at LFA 171. LFA 197 is coming up this week. He's been in Combate, he's been in Fusion. Solid stuff. I think, we just have such little sample of Ochoa at this level. I believe that, especially at 23, that this guy, could have a future in the UFC flyweight division. Just this is a really tough one to come into, but, get some wins against, guys that maybe aren't as dangerous as Loner Kavanaugh. And I think that this guy could definitely hang around in the UFC. Having said that, Kavanaugh is the minus 365 favorite for good reason. I do think that Kavanaugh wins this fight probably. Especially what we saw against Antoine Ho. I would say, I'd say he probably wins this fight 80, 75, 80, maybe 83 times out of 100. Kavanaugh by knockout plus 165 against a guy with so little experience at the top, at really elite levels, respectable levels for sure, just enough to give him a bit of confidence to go in and have more exchanges with Kavanaugh. Ochoa is a guy that likes to look for finishes. He's been very good at it in his professional career. Will that leave him vulnerable against the more dangerous prospect? Kavanaugh by knockout plus 165. Hit it! If you're going Ochoa, hell, no, plus 290. You go Ochoa inside the distance to get wild, and that's plus 365. That's not really even worth it. Kavanaugh also, in round 1, plus 400. Not horrible. This fight to go under 1.5 rounds plus 170. I think that that's worth looking at. I don't want to react too strongly to Loner Kavanaugh's last, performance. I think Antoine Ho came in wanting to knock him out. I think that they were both really excited for that fight. But, Kavanaugh is an animal. And let's see what his other finishes, what round they were all in. Round 1, round 3 in Cage Warriors, round 3, round 1, round 2. Whew. All right, never mind. I'm actually not going with any round for him. Kavanaugh by knockout plus 165. I think that is solid. I think that that's the most likely method of victory there. And I think it's a good number for it. Next up, we've got a flyweight match between Niamjargal Tumen against Carlos Hernandez. That's going to be a tough one. Niamjargal is the plus 160 underdog. Hernandez, the minus 185 favorite. Let's start off talking about Niamjargal, all right? Predictably, this dude is fighting out of Mongolia. You can always tell who's fighting out of Mongolia based on those names. Nicknamed the Art of Knockout. 8-0 as a professional, 26 years old. Fantastic young talent on this card. Love to see it. Came in from Gladiator, organizations like MGL, Mongol FC, I love that. Road to UFC won a split decision over Top Noi Kyoram. Another round 1 submission over Peter Deneso back in August of 2023. Overall, 2 wins by knockout, 5 by submission, 1 by decision. I can respect the Gladiator FC win. A lot of finishes on his record. He's mixed it up well in terms of knockouts and submissions. 2 wins in Road to UFC, very respectable. Carlos Hernandez, on the other hand. This guy's been in the UFC. He first appeared on the Contender Series October of 2021 when he beat Daniel Perez by split decision, outstriking him 77-52, giving up 5 takedowns. Won a split decision in his UFC debut against Victor Altamirano. And he's had to fight some really tough guys, like Alan Nascimento. He got submitted by him. You get knocked out by Tatsuro Taira. You lose a close decision to Ray Tsuruya. That's a much better pronunciation. And, I can't say anything bad about losing to Nascimento and Tatsuro Taira. Beating Dennis Bondar, outstriking him 102-76, 2 takedowns each. Bondar ended up going, it is 0-3 in the UFC. But Tsuruya, my God, since Road to UFC to his UFC debut, 4-0 at that level. And he's going to be fighting at UFC 312 in February. So, I actually think Carlos Hernandez is an amazing value here. I don't think that Naim Jargal has, I don't think he warrants that giant prospect status, obviously, because he's the plus 160 underdog here. But, I might be rooting for Naim Jargal. I root for the fighters from Mongolia usually, and from any country that doesn't have a huge amount of representation. But it's just too much UFC experience for Carlos Hernandez. You only had to go back 2.5 years to find a win over Victor Altamirano. Not an easy thing to do. He's gotten a good taste of what some of the top prospect talent in the UFC looks like. And he handled Ray Tsuruya, he gave Ray Tsuruya plenty to handle. So Carlos Hernandez minus 185. I think that money line is fantastic. I think Hernandez probably wins this fight 75 times to 80 out of 100. I would go Hernandez by decision here, historically. I don't think that he's especially anywhere remotely in this area. As a 9-4 professional, 31 years old, he's only got 4 finishes on his record. The other 5 wins are by decision. And I do think Naim Jargal can absolutely survive. I think he has enough experience for that. Hernandez by decision plus 115, getting it at plus money. Hit it. I'm probably going to really like Hernandez this week just because I'm very confident in this victory. But who knows, Who knows? These Road to UFC cards, I'm sure we're going to end up with some nutty results. I'm sure about it, Not only do we have not lesser information, but it's just the guys, the Asian prospects, you can see when you watch Ryzen and when you watch Deep and you see some of these guys' records at 21 years old, their record really does not tell the full story about them. It's really hard to tell on those guys, especially from the level of competition they faced, what level they are actually at. So we're going to get some nutty results here, but I feel really good about Carlos Hernandez. And, you know what?
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Carlos Hernandez, that's a very tough test for Naim Jargal coming into the UFC. Just from 2 Road to UFC wins, one of which he had to win by split decision. Next up, we have the women's strawweight Road to UFC tournament championship between Zhao Confang and Ming Shi. Ooh, I love the Road to UFC stuff. Especially when it's when they do that stuff that's in the mornings on weekends, super early. That's always fun. Reminder, by the way, this card starts Saturday at 3 in the morning. Because it's in China, remember? So, either dig a hole all the way across the planet at the end of this week, or set your alarm super early for UFC Macau. Anyway, Fang is the minus 410 favorite. She the plus 310 underdog. Let's start off with Zhao Confang, the favorite. Obviously, winner of 2 in a row at Road to UFC. That's how she got to this point. 10-2 as a professional. 22 years old at strawweight. Currently ranked 80th in the world. 4 wins by knockout, 5 by decision, and 1 submission. She was in WLF wars before, her time in Road to UFC. She beat the Indian fighter Kiran Singh, who's now 6-4 as a pro. She finished her by TKO in round 1 back in May, and then won a unanimous decision over Miki Matono in August. In that fight, she outstruck Matono 63-19. Did get taken down 3 times, so that could be. Nope, looking at the stats, that's not something to watch. But Fang, she has got professional kickboxing experience. One of her, professional losses is to Na Liang, who, while she has not done well in the UFC, she does have 4 fights of UFC experience, fighting some decent fighters. And that was back in 2020. In 2020, she was 18 years old. The other loss is to Zhai Mao. That name sounds familiar. Nope, I made it up in my head. Not familiar. She also has a loss to Na Liang, though. Look at that circle. So that is the favorite, Zhao Kan Fang. Ming Shi, 16-5 as a professional, 30 years old. She attended the University of Chinese Medicine. Foundation style Taekwondo and catch wrestling. Love to see it from China. 1 win by knockout, 6 by submission, 9 by decision. Also from WLF Wars. Now, you have to go back to when her opponents had, maybe some better records. Recently, before Road to UFC, both of which she won those fights by unanimous both by decision. The first one against Yedan Seo by unanimous decision, outstriking her 38-27. Got taken down once, landed a knockdown, couldn't finish it. And then against Dong Haojiang in August of this year, outstruck her 74-57. Got taken down 4 times. That's how it ended up being a split decision in favor of Ming. I guess it's something to watch. Zhao Kan did have 2 takedowns against Kiran Singh. Also did not let Singh land a single punch. 40-0, 2 takedowns to nothing. A rare shutout. A real shutout in the sport of mixed martial arts. By the way, Ming Shi's nickname is Doctor. Not to be slept on. So, I think that this fight is probably just, a little bit closer than these odds indicate. I think, in this kind of fight, I would not fault anybody for sprinkling a little on Shi plus 310. I think that that's just a little bit inflated of a number for a Road to UFC final. But I do think Fang is deservedly the favorite. I don't think Fang does what she did to Sang, to Ming Shi. Ming Shi has had a long career. She's had a lot of good wins. A lot of her, all but one of her losses, all came from 2018 or before. So she's been on a fantastic winning stretch, and at least showed that, she can pile together volume striking against Dong Haojiang, but her strikes were, powerful against Yedan Seo. I think that the fight is just, closer than these odds indicate. So, I do think Fang probably wins this fight, 75, 80 times out of 100. I think that's fair. I would still go, Fang by decision, minus 185. Hit it. And if I'm going to go Shi, I go decision too. That's plus 400. Not a bad number at all. Wouldn't blame you at all for Shi by decision if you hit it. And especially Shi by split decision. If you're going crazy here, that's plus 1100. Fang by split decision is plus 900. I think it's more likely that a victory for her looks a little bit more dominant. So Shi by split decision plus 1100. I think that, that's not insane. These are fights I think you can take some more chances on because I just don't, these odds are just not going to be as spot on. You know what I mean? It's just when we talk all the time about some of these early prelim, women's fights between 2 people new to the UFC with limited records. We think we know who's better, but we can end up looking extremely wrong as soon as the fight begins. Sometimes there's just because of the pace that the fight is being fought at, it could happen. It could go anywhere on the judges' scorecards. So again, like, don't blame you for sheep, on the money line. Don't blame you for sheep by decision. Don't blame you for sheep by split decision. I do think the most single likely outcome is Fang by decision. If I was going to pick another outcome for it, it'd be Fang by knockout. But I don't think that ends up happening. I think she does survive until the end of the fight. Next up, we got the flyweight road to UFC finale.
Break out the red panties.
Always looking for who's going to be the next flyweight talent to enter that incredibly talented and entertaining division. We got Kiru Sahota and Dong Hoon Choi. Needed some water there. Okay. So, Sahota is this is Pick'em. -110 each. Fantastic. Well, then let's just go with, let's go Sahota first. 12-2 as a professional, technically fighting out of England. He was born in England. But, what is he? Is he, technically, Indian by heritage? I believe that was the case. 29 years old, 12-2 as a professional, 6 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 4 by decision. Had one fight in Cage Warriors prior to coming on Road to UFC. He was in Cage Steel against some other European talents. Holy Town Havoc, he was the flyweight champion there. Venator, brief stops everywhere. And then again, kind of like some other fighters in Road to UFC, a lot that we've seen before, 2 close decisions, or at least 2 decisions. One of them was close because when he fought Yin Shai back in May, it was a split decision. He outstruck Yin 46-36, but he was taken down 9-1. That led to the split of the judges' scorecards. But in August, to get to the finale, wins by unanimous decision, outstriking Ruel Penales 84-38, 1 takedown each. Dong Hoon Choi, on the other hand, 8-0 as a professional, 25 years old, fighting out of Seoul, South Korea. 3 wins by knockout, 5 by decision, 2 split decision victories in the road to UFC. Statistically, got a knockdown against Angad Bisht back in August, 78-52 in the striking, only taken down 2 times at least, Got the knockdown, then the first split decision against Jinny Yushiu. Outstruck him 58-48, 1 takedown. This is a tough one. They're all tough. The over-under in this fight, over 2.5 is -205. I like that. I don't know if it's enough for me. Maybe it's parlay worthy, perhaps. Choi by decision is +130. Immediately, my favorite individual outcome or method of victory pick of this one. Sahota by decision is +200. I actually think Sahota has just we've seen some versatile results from him. 6 by knockout, 2 by submission, 4 by decision. That is how, the road to UFC stuff went. I think, Choi is more likely to win by decision, just career trajectory-wise, and the way that these skill sets kind of match up. So, +130 for Choi by decision. I like it. Hit it. I think this is another one where, wouldn't blame you at all for going by split decision. Sahota by split decision, +625. Choi by split decision, +550. I just trust Choi's professional resume just a little bit more. I mean, Sahota, the one fight that he did have in Cage Warriors, he got knocked out in the second round. Choi, was in Gladiator Challenge Series. The 2 opponents that he fought before coming into Road to UFC, they did have a combined record of 16-7-3. He knocked those 2 opponents out, but only 3 knockouts on his record. I also trust a little bit more that he did have that knockdown in his most recent fight. I think that those strikes from Choi will just be more meaningful against Sahota. I don't think that he finishes Sahota, but Cejudo inside the distance probably isn't horrible. We haven't seen Choi lose in his professional career. If I had to pick one of them inside the distance, I don't know, maybe Cejudo, that's plus 305. Choi is plus 305 too inside the distance. This is another fight that I think probably goes to decision, though. Choi by decision, plus 130. I think that's the best one there. I think that's going to continue to be a common theme as we work through some more Chinese and Asian fighters. But we're going to get to some fights later, too, that I do not think are going to be inside the distance. Next up, the final road to UFC finale. We got Baraging Gialisi against Su Young Yu. It's the Bantamweight Road to UFC Tournament Championship. And let's see. Gotta find these names on Bet Online. Baraging is the plus 125 underdog. Yu, the minus 145 favorite over 2.5 rounds in this fight, is, again, minus 205. Let's start off with Gialisi. All right. Fought on road to UFC May of 2023 and lost by split decision to Shuya Kamakubo. Outstruck 58-38 there. The guy was born in 1995. What country is he from? Is it important? Yes, it's important. He's from China. Okay, 19-5 as a professional. And to go back a little further, and Tapology always spells everything differently. 28 years old, 9 wins by submission, 5 by knockout, 4 by decision. Fought in Alash Pride UAE Warriors, won by split decision there over Xavier Aloui. Fought in WLF a few times, many times. Look at that going back. Not like too many like recognizable names on his resume, but like a lot of the WLF people, prolific, over the last few years. They are well-rounded. They can go all 3 rounds. They put plenty of people away in a variety of manners. Su Young Yu, nickname Yu Jitsu, sick name. Let's see. Again, Yu is the minus 145 favorite. And, to go back to Gialisi for a second, second round rear naked choke over Li Yufeng, May of this year. Outstriking him 24-5 in the process up into the second round. And then won a pretty close unanimous decision over Tokitaka Nakanishi in August, outstriking him 24-20, 3 takedowns to 2. Yu, also born in 1995, at the tail end of 1995. He's just like a few weeks older than Gialisi. Jiu-Jitsu got 2 decision victories en route to being in the tournament championship. The first road to UFC fight this year that he fought, May, against Shohei Nosei, beats him by unanimous decision with 4 takedowns to 1 and 6 strikes to 5.
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
How do you win a fight unanimously? And then I guess this speaks more against Shohei, really. 6 strikes? 6 of them? Almost have more takedowns than the strikes that you landed, and your opponent doesn't outstrike you? That says a lot about the will he's able to impose on his opponents at the very least. In August, he won by split decision against Diarmisi Zaupasi. He got outstruck 49-47, but 8 takedowns to 1 in that fight. Control time in that fight, only 2 minutes and 44 seconds with 8 takedowns. That is concerning. You also, prior in his professional career, has a fight in Naza FC. That is an organization that I respect. He was their bantamweight champion. He fought in UAE Warriors as well, but lost by unanimous decision there. Has a fight in Pancrase going back to 2019. 5 of his wins career-wise are by submission out of 13. It does take a little bit of oomph off of that Jiu-Jitsu nickname, which is sick, but honestly, I can't blame you for going beer gang. Plus 125 in a fight, dude, when you get 8 takedowns, you can't hold your opponent down, longer than 2 minutes and 44 seconds. I think that you was very lucky to get to this point. Statistically, it's hard to have a split decision in a fight where you land 6 strikes and you came out victorious in both of them. And, even in that first, he had 10 minutes of control time against Shohei Nosei and only landed 6 strikes with it. Beer Gang is a more dangerous opponent. I think just right here, I think this is probably like a flip of a coin. And for that reason, I'd go Beer Gang plus 125. Not super confidently here, but I think it's an underdog spot that I think is worth taking. Beer Gang, I don't know. Again, by decision, plus 275. You by decision, plus 150. Give me Beer Gang by decision, I suppose. This is the toughest one to call so far, honestly, and it's all because of the statistical weirdness Soo Young Yu's last 2 fights. 12 takedowns, about 13 to 14 minutes of control time, 53 combined strikes with that much time on the ground. That is wild. You gotta probably do more here against Beer Gang to end up the road to UFC Bantamweight champion. All right, we've got 6 fights remaining. We are past the road to UFC Tournament Championships. And now we have a light heavyweight matchup between Ozzy Diaz and Zhang Ming Yang. Zhang Ming Yang, I believe, is the favorite here. Where's he at? There we go. Yeah, the minus 330 favorite, to be exact. Ozzy Diaz, the plus 270 underdog. Ozzy Diaz lost in the Contender Series July 2022 by second-round knockout to Joe Pyfer. I'm not going to hold that too strongly against him. But what's he been up to since then? He's 9-2 as a professional. 33 years old. Not a lot of fights on the record for being 33 years old. Has 2 wins, both in LFA, and the fight before fighting Joe Pyfer was also in LFA. He's been in Bellator, with wins over Christopher Reyes and Andre Walker. So he has 2 wins, since getting knocked out in the Contender Series. And both those wins were by knockout, one of which is to Bevan Lewis, who, by the way, you want to talk about Bevan Lewis, he just lost to former recent Tap That Guest, Julius Juicebox Walker at Synergy FC 16 for that organization's light heavyweight championship. So shout out to Julius Walker. That's an exciting win for him that I'm sure gets him on more radars. But Ozzy Diaz, has been in solid organizations. I mean, when you're talking about the only loss that he has had in over 6 years is a knockout loss to Joe Pyfer, and you're coming off knockout victories over Chuck Campbell and Bevan Lewis, all right. That's a solid spot to be in. He's the former LFA vacant middleweight champion, or won the vacant championship, so he was the middleweight champion. Mingyang Zhang, the Mountain Tiger, 17-6 as a pro, 26 years old, 6'2", 75-inch reach, 11 wins by knockout, 6 by submission. All of his professional wins have come inside the distance. And he had a violent finish over Bridson Ribeiro back in February with a first-round knockout. This guy has only put people away. He fought Tuco Tokos, beat him by round 1 knockout and road to UFC all the way back in June of 2022. That was his first fight before fighting Bridson Ribeiro. This guy was in WLF MMA. He was their tournament champion. You have to go back to 2019 to find a loss on his record. Ozzy Diaz, again, I think that Ozzy is maybe being slept on just a little bit here when you look at the handicapping of this. Over 1.5 rounds in this fight is plus 200. And every single inside the distance win for Zhang Ming Yang has been in round 1. Ozzy Diaz, I think, let's say, round 2, round 1, round 1, round 2, round 1, round 1, round 1, round 2, round 1. He was knocked out in the second round by Pfeiffer, in the first round by Santiago Diaz. He actually fought Dominic Reyes back in 2014. Is it the Dominic Reyes? Oh, it's the Dominic Reyes. Got submitted in round 1. So, like, you could go the route of, like, picking one, what did I say? Under 1.5 rounds was minus 260. Maybe these guys feel each other out just a bit more. I could see it going into round 2, like picking either of these guys by round 2. Zhang in round 2, that's plus 375, and round 1 is plus 150. But I do like Zhang Mingyang just straight up by knockout minus 130. I think that's an excellent value. I would not blame you again in this one for going Ozzy Diaz plus 270. Britson Ribeiro, to look at what he has done. So I remember some of the lead up to this. 16-7 as a professional. Actually now is a split decision win over Cal Machado in November, just a few weeks ago. So now it's a decent amount of UFC experience, but like before coming onto the Contender Series, it was like one fight in Shooto, Brazil, and not a ton else. So I mean that's a good win for Zhang Mingyang. And I think I do think like the most likely single outcome is like Zhang by knockout minus 130. Zhang inside the distance is minus 200, not as worth it. But, like, Ozzy Diaz, can't blame you for going with him plus 270. That much LFA experience, beating former UFC, fighters at middleweight and light heavyweight, guys that came from middleweight and light heavyweight. And one more portion here. Ozzy Diaz, how does he size up? 6'4", with a 75.5 inch reach. I remember Zhang looking pretty damn big in that last fight. So when you have that level of professional experience and your only loss in a long time is a knockout loss to Joe Pfeiffer, plus 270 seems a little extreme for a guy that is still like not that far. Just 2 years ago, it was him fighting on road to UFC for Zhang. Again, I think Zhang probably wins this fight 70, maybe 75 times out of 100. By knockout's the most reasonable way. And hell, if you want to go Ozzy Diaz and get nuts with it, Ozzy by knockout plus 450. Not a bad number. But I think you could go Ozzy Diaz plus 270 on the money line. Be comfortable taking that shot. But there's a difference between the guys that are worth taking a shot on and what the most likely outcome is. And I do think Zhang is the more talented fighter with the higher ceiling here, obviously. And by knockout minus 130, I think is a very fair number. But hey, Ozzy Diaz.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie. Come on.
No reason to be scared, homie. Take it from one Diaz to another. All right, next up, we've got another light heavyweight matchup between Volkan Oezdemir and Carlos Ulberg. Fantastic. Let's see here. Carlos Ulberg is the minus 235 favorite. Volkan the plus 200 underdog. Let's talk about the veteran Volkan. Volkan, if you can believe it, has now won 3 of his 4 fights. 3 of his last 4. Dating back to July 2022. He has at least fought and won in each of the last 3 years. Going back just to August of 2019, no, forget that. Go back even further. This guy's UFC debut was OSP in 2017. Fought Misha Serkinov, Jimmy Manuwa, beat them both. Had that stretch of 3 straight losses to Daniel Cormier, to Anthony Smith, and Dominic Reyes. Can't blame him for that. Now, this guy's born in 1989. But he's got some timeless skills that we've seen it time and again. He's got wins over Alexander Rakic. The other losses recently, since July 2020, got knocked out by Jiri in what I believe was Jiri's UFC debut back at UFC 251, the first Usman Masvidal card. Lost a unanimous decision to Magomed Ankalaev, and now has started the stretch of 3 of 4. A decision victory over Paul Craig, outstriking him 72-33 with a takedown. A unanimous decision loss to Nikita Krylov. Got outstruck 57-42, taken down 7 times to 1. Now he's gotten 2 first-round finishes in a row against Bogdan Guskov, Anthony Smith's doppelganger, and Johnny Walker. By a first-round knockout, June of this year. Had 2 knockdowns in that fight en route to that finish. 6'2", 75-inch reach, Carlos Ulberg. 6'4", 77-inch reach. Only born in 1990, not that much younger. 11-1 as a pro, nicknamed the Black Jag. Since coming into the UFC via the Contender Series. Knockouts of Bruno Oliveira, Tefan Nchukwi, Nikolai Nagumarianu, Ihor Potieria, Da Woon Jung. He actually submitted him in round 3. And now he's coming off another first-round knockout victory over Alonzo Minifield. That's just the knockouts. Has a decision over Fabio Chiron. It's crazy for a guy that is, 34 years old. It's crazy for that guy that they have, especially a guy like with the kind of striking experience that he has, seems like a marketable dude. Does he model something like that? I believe so. That's ringing a bell. And they've brought him along very, very steadily after losing to Kennedy and Nchekwu. I mean, like, the leap from Fabio Chiron to Alonzo Minifield, you would not think it would be a 6-fight gap. But you have to fight Ihor Potieria, just May of 2023. That win does so little for you. And I feel like that was a replacement, like a last-second replacement where Ihor Potieria comes in. I think it was something like that. But again, what's the most likely individual outcome? Probably, it's probably Ulberg by knockout. Like Magomed couldn't knock him out. Nikita Krylov couldn't knock him out. The only people that have been able to knock out Volkan are Jiri and DC in the UFC. So, I don't know, over 1.5 rounds in this fight is minus 185. Ulberg by decision is a plus 250. I think, you'd have to buy into, Ulberg is just much more even reliable than Johnny Walker at this point. Bogdan Guskov, that's a guy that's knocked out Zach Palga, and now Ryan Spann. That wasn't necessarily an easy thing for Volkan to get past. I think, by knockout for Ulberg plus 140, I think that's the most logical, but I don't blame you for going Ulberg by decision plus 250 because it's just proven so hard to knock Volkan out. I don't think you have to go with a method of victory for Volkan because here's the thing. This is another one where even if you're pinning down the most likely single outcome, I think that these odds for Volkan as the underdog at plus 200 are kind of insane. Plus 200 for a guy winning 3 of his last 4 against, essentially ranked light heavyweight competition. He hasn't had a great level of activity since this decade started. But he's always, going back to 2017, has only fought the best light heavyweights in the world. And again, kind of some timeless skills there for Volkan. So yeah, this is one I could see taking either of these guys in DFS, honestly. And I haven't really talked too much about that tonight. If I had to pick a lineup out of these guys right now, it's going to be hard. Leonard Kavanaugh would be part of that. Kong Lei, if he's going to be, cheap, but, Mahashate, I could see being up there. If he's, in the mid or, lower 8,000s on DraftKings, I could see going with Zhang. Ozzy Diaz will be cheap. But, I could see, if Ulberg's going to be expensive, no way. I think there's better expensive options, or that there's going to be. And I could see going with Volkan cheaply here. Again, so, Volkan.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie.
This dude may be fresher, but he's, for people saying Volkan's old, Carlos Ulberg's been old since he got to the UFC. Just comparing him to the other guys that he's trying to face. So Volkan plus 200, I think, is very tempting. And, Ulberg by knockout, I think, is deceptive. Just because it's just proven so hard to knock Volkan out. Ulberg absolutely has the power and the striking ability to do it. But, historically, that has been a distinction saved for only the best light heavyweights in the world. Woo! Next up, we got a women's flyweight matchup between Gabriela Fernandez and Kong Wang. All right? Kong Wang, with some fantastic professional kickboxing experience. That is the reason that she is the minus 800 favorite. Let's see. I'll call it that. We'll start with Gabriela Fernandez. All right. Winner of her last fight, June of this year, by split decision over Carly Judas, getting outstruck 169 to 119, 2 takedowns each, 29-28 on all three judges' scorecards. Just one had it for Judice. Lost her first 2 fights in the UFC. Kept it actually competitive with former Top That guest Jasmine Jazz Duvicius in her UFC debut, February of 2023. She just got taken down 4 times. That was a difference maker. And then lost a unanimous decision to Teresa Bleda, June of last year, getting outstruck 57 to 23 and taken down 3 times. Kong Wang, born in 1992, road to UFC. She submitted Paula Luna in round 1, and then she made her UFC debut, knocking out Victoria Leonardo in the first round, only allowing Leonardo to land 1 strike. Kong Wang, 6-0 as a mixed martial arts fighter, 32 years old, and 2 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 2 by decision. Go back in her professional kickboxing record, all right? Plenty of championships and tournament championships. That's just, going back just to 2018. Has a win by unanimous decision in UAE Warriors in MMA. Beat Valentina Shevchenko by unanimous decision in kickboxing in 2015. Wins over Svetlana Vinakova. Even if you don't know who Vinakova is, that's just a name that screams kickboxer. So, as much as I hate to say it, Gabriela Fernandez.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Very, very reasonable for Kong Wang to be such a heavy favorite here. Fernandez, 31 years old, 3 losses by decision, and, just not like a ton. Fought an LFA a couple of times. I think anything that could help her survive, just maybe longer exposure to mixed martial arts, but not really, right? Kong Wang is a very high-level kickboxer. Very high level. That has translated very well to mixed martial arts over the last couple of years. I do think Kong Wang wins this fight 85 to 90 times out of 100, probably. That is how fantastic she looked against Victoria Leonardo. The question is, Kong Wang, how do you play this if you want to? First of all, I really like her in DFS. I do think that's a very expensive option that I think could be worth budgeting for, but we're going to get to some of the later fights that could apply to maybe. Wang by knockout plus 250. Wang by decision minus 105. Jasmine didn't finish Gabriela because she took her down easily and held her there and controlled her and, used her strength to her advantage. But Kong Wang knocking out Victoria Leonardo, as easy as she did was significant. You're telling me you can get plus money on Wang by knockout plus 250? Hit it! And then by decision, minus 105, not bad at all. Under 2.5 rounds in this fight is plus 135. That seems crazy. Teresa Bleda is a far cry from Kong Wang. So if I was going Fernandez, I wouldn't. But you don't have to go method of victory. Money line plus 550. Hell, split decision for Gabriela Fernandez. It's plus 2,000. Might as well just roll with that if you're going to go money line. But Kong Wang by knockout, then by decision, under 2.5 here. I think all of those are very reasonable. And hell, you want to go even crazier? Kong Wang in round 1 by knockout plus 600. Round 2 plus 800. A lot of fun to be had on that one. I'm very excited to see how Kong Wang looks in this one. That's an exciting talent for the women's flyweight division. And, when there's just a high-level kickboxer that enters this sport, they get a fast track, deservedly so, because we've seen them be very successful in other walks of combat sports. We got 3 fights left, and we now have a welterweight matchup between Song Kenan and Muslim Salikov. Now, I haven't talked much about any home field advantage here. I think if anything, honestly, it's probably a home judging advantage. Who knows what kind of stuff might be going on in Macau. But, like, I don't think, like, home crowd advantage is going to be a big deal here. But Song Kenan versus Muslim Salikov, it's crazy. This seems like a fight that, like, has to have happened before, but it's not. They just seem like two names that would have faced each other at a certain point. Now, Song Kenan is the, where's he at? The plus 150 underdog. Salikov, the minus 175 favorite. You got to go back to 2017 when Song Kenan made his UFC debut against Bobby Nash for the first round knockout. He's knocked out Hector Aldana. And it's crazy because maybe Rolando Bedoya and Ricky Glenn, his 2 of his last 3 wins that he's faced. Both of those wins by decision. Those are the most meaningful wins that he's had in his career, I think. Bedoya and Ricky Glenn. Before then, it was like he would fight some tough fighters. Like he fought Brad Riddell. That was actually a longer time ago than even when he was in the UFC. He's fought Alex Morono, Max Griffin, Ian Machado, Gary, even Kevin Jousset. Those were losses. Up to his wins, Hector Aldana, Derek Krantz, Callan Potter. Pretty insignificant up till August of 2023 when he got that unanimous decision win over Rolando Bedoya. And in those 2 last fights, he landed a combined 162 strikes. 152 were landed against him, though 112 of those were Rolando Bedoya. He got a knockdown against Bedoya. The takedown game usually not super relevant for him. If anything, it's more of a as needed or when things are going bad kind of situation. Muslim Salikov, born in 1984. This man is 40 years old. The king of Kung Fu is 40 years old. He's actually coming off of a split decision victory over Santiago Ponzinibbio, July of this year. Losses to Randy Brown. Nicholas Dalby got knocked out by Randy Brown. Lost a unanimous decision to Dalby, who outstruck him 86-57. They each had 2 takedowns. I mean, I see why Salikov's the favorite. 40 years old or not, he's faced the more meaningful name. He has a winner, Francisco Trinaldo, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. But, you got to go back. He's got the win over Santiago Ponzinibbio by split decision. Then you go back 2 years for his last win. That was a 3rd-round knockout against Andre Fiallo, which does not mean a whole lot these days. This is another one. Song Kenan, what is it, plus 150? Muslim Salikov is not of the class of opponent that Kenan Song has proven he cannot beat. If anything, at least over these last 2 of 3, certainly Muslim Salikov has a lot of experience. He's an interesting style. He never goes that long without a win. But, this feels like a 50-50 matchup to me. And I don't, even, the recent result against Santiago Ponzinibbio aside, and Santiago, no spring chicken himself. But this just seems like a flip of a coin. I like Song Kenan plus 150. I think if he can land 75 to 80 strikes in this fight, he's going to be in it. I could see this being a close decision like Muslim Salikov's last fight was. Yeah, I think this is like a 50-50. I think that either Muslim Salikov kind of slows down the fight to his pace and maybe the fight goes exactly like it did against Santiago, where it's 46-41 in the striking. Salikov lands some of the bigger shots. Over 2.5 rounds. And this one is minus 145. I like that plenty. But Song Kenan by decision, plus 265. Song Kenan by knockout, plus 400. By split decision for both these guys, it's crazy that over 2.5 here is at minus 145. Yet, either of these guys by split decision, Song plus 650, Salikov plus 550. So Vegas seems to think that if this does go to the judges' scorecards, it's more likely to be at some razor-thin margins. So, yeah, I just don't see it even still. And I made that mistake last time against Santiago Ponzinibbio, and he's fought really tough fighters. And, the last Chinese fighter he fought was Li Jiangliang, and he lost by second-round knockout. That's not unimportant. But I just, and maybe if Song Kenan had never beaten Ricky Glenn or Bedoya, I don't love either of these two fighters. I hate that Song Kenan, I hate that I'm picking someone who has a loss to Kevin Jousset, December of 2023. But it's always an interesting stylistic matchup against Muslim Salikov. So I'm going to stick to my guns here and say that Song Kenan plus 150 I think is a good number. I think over 2.5 minus 145 could very easily happen. I think that's very good odds to get that at. And, I don't love a method of victory here. I think you could take Muslim Salikov money line minus 175, and I think it's a little bit better than any individual method of victory. So I would just go money line here, and then I like over 2.5. And if I'm going with either of these guys in DFS, for sure it's going to be Kenan Song. I'm not trying to pay, that high of a price for Muslim Salikov. And if he's minus, 175, I just have a feeling like it's going to be out of the price range that I'm willing to pay for him. And now we're to the Jan Squared events. And look at me, only an hour in, and we are to the women's strawweight co-main event between Tabitha Ricci and Yan Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan is the minus 190 favorite, Ricci the plus 165 underdog. Let's start out with Tabitha Ricci, okay? Only lost 2 UFC fights so far out of 8 dating back to June of 2021. She got knocked out by Manon Fiorot in her UFC debut. She lost a split decision to Lupi Godinez at UFC 295 about a year ago. Winner of 6 of her last 7 fights, including wins over Poliana Viana, Jessica Penne by second-round armbar, Jillian Robertson, who she landed 100 strikes and 3 takedowns against, Tisha Pennington by split decision. She got outstruck 80-54 in that fight and is coming off a unanimous decision victory against Angela Hill, getting outstruck 112-101 with 3 takedowns in that fight August 24th, 2024 on the Cannonier vs. Borrello card. I love that about Tabitha Ricci, the multiple triple-digit striking performances. Her, it's for that reason, also just the value of her strikes that she lands. You see her, win some close decisions. She had 10 takedowns combined against Poliana Viana and Maria Oliveira. Tabitha Ricci is someone that figures out a way to win if you're not that much better than her, like Manon Fiorot. And Lupi Godinez, that was just a close fight. Tabitha Ricci, I don't think is necessary. We'll get into Yan Xiaonan in a second. But, for DFS purposes, as an underdog, I don't hate Tabitha Ricci when, she can get triple-digit strikes. She can get 3 to 5 takedowns. Only 1 finish in her UFC record so far. And by the way, for how many times these fights between these two fighters go to decision, over 2.5 in this fight is minus 400. Going the distance, minus 350. Yan Xiaonan, born in 1989, surprisingly up there in age. Her last fight was April of this year at UFC 300 against Zhang Wei Li, lost by emphatic unanimous decision, getting outstruck 106-43, 6 takedowns to 3. She did have a knockdown in that fight. Had the first round knockout over Jessica Andrade before that, landed 113 strikes in the majority decision victory against Mackenzie Dern. Majority decision. Jan's an interesting fighter. She beat Angela Hill by unanimous decision too, outstruck Angela Hill 94-71, landed 150 strikes against Yuri Kondo back in 2019, I believe. November 2018. Weird activity level from Yan, honestly. She's only fought twice since October of 2022. I can't believe the Mackenzie Dern fight was already that long ago. But also, losses by second-round knockout to Carla Esparza, and then by split decision to Marina Rodriguez. So, this one I do think it'll matter that it's in China. Like, I do think that this fight probably goes the distance. You look at both of their, professional resumes. Jessica Andrade, Jean Janon did finish her, but, like, Andrade has mostly been getting finished over the last, over a little bit over a year, but she's fought a good amount of times. She fought 5 times in 2023. And I just, Ricci has a lot of wins of a similar quality level. Robertson, Panay, Viana, Pennington, Angela Hill. Ricci has only been taken down 2 times since she came to the UFC. Once by Furio, once by Jillian Robertson. So only one of those fights even ended in a loss. And Jan is someone that we always think of as, or at least I always think of, as being pretty controlling from the top. But, she had 3 takedowns against Zhang in an unsuccessful effort, but was taken down twice by Mackenzie Dern. She got 2 takedowns against Marina Rodriguez in a losing effort. She got taken down 3 times by Carlos Esparza, twice by Claudia Gadelha. The last time she landed a bunch of takedowns and won was Karolina Kovalkiewicz, February of 2020. Again, this is another one. Jan minus 190, I wouldn't blame you at all for it. And, Jan by decision minus 120, definitely wouldn't blame you at all for that one. But this is within Ricci's grasp, absolutely. I think, I think that this one very well could end up a split decision. It could even end up going to the wrong person. But, you can see, it's Jan by split plus 550, Ricci by split plus 650. If you're going Ricci, you go by decision. That's plus 225. I think that Jan probably wins this fight 65 times out of 100. Maybe 60 to 65. So plus 165 for Ricci, I think is a really good, I think that's a good way to go. You got to go, one of her only 2 UFC losses is to a person that very well might be the flyweight champion at some point. The striking volume could make a difference, and if she can keep the takedowns close, this is very much a fight that she can win. So I think plus 165 is a worthy number. Tabitha Ricci is the underdog in China.
One comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie. Come on.
No reason to be scared. Again, if I'm going DFS, I probably like Ricci more than Jan, just comparing their prices. I think there's better ways to go for heavy favorites on this card. And Jan is not a heavy favorite by any means. But again, if you're picking either of these 2 fighters, go by decision. This is overwhelmingly trending towards being a fight that goes the distance. This is probably going to happen around 6 a.m. on Saturday. So if you set your alarm earlier than you usually do on Saturday, you can wake up and catch the last 2 fights of this card. Jan's just such a hard fighter to predict. Looking back, you wonder if that run to the title fight was flash in the panish. A win over Jessica Andrade May of 2023. Those mean less and less as time goes on. The win over Mackenzie Dern, she was very close to getting submitted in that fight at the end of round 3. And Marina and Carla, then she's lost 3 of her last 5. You already have to go back over 4 years to find that win over Claudia Gadelha. So Jan's an interesting case. And so for all those weird reasons, and for Tabitha Ricci's activity level, where she's fought twice this year, this is going to be the 3rd time. She fought 3 times in 2023. The competition has been steady, but I think keeps getting better and more experienced. And, talking like Lupe Godinez, I think that she could beat Lupe Godinez if they fought again. Absolutely. So I don't know. That's another very mild, moderate underdog in Baby Shark, Tabitha Ricci, that I think is worth taking a flyer on. Woo! And now we are to the main event of UFC Macau. Petr Yan and Deiveson Figueiredo.
Break out the red panties.
And in this one, Deiveson Figueiredo is the plus 250 underdog. Petr Yan, the minus 300 favorite. First of all, Davison Figueiredo. Is there a person alive who is into this sport that doesn't like Davison Figueiredo? I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one. Since arriving in the UFC, June of 2017, the guy born in 1997, Davison Figueiredo, has lost to just two men. The first one was Josier Formiga back in March of 2019. The other one was Brandon Moreno, twice after fighting to a draw with him and beating Moreno once in the middle of that by unanimous decision. So break this into pieces, right? Like the very impressive flyweight run that Figueiredo went on towards the title before the whole saga with Brandon Moreno, beat Alexander Pantoja, the current champion, subbed Tim Elliott, knocked out Joseph Benavidez, and then subbed him just a few months later. Then he defends the belt with a first-round submission against Alex Perez. You wonder after the whole thing, is it over for Figueiredo? Is it done for Figgy? For De Stagera? No, he moves to bantamweight, wins 3 in a row since doing that. A unanimous decision over Rob Font, getting outstruck 46-45, but landing 4 takedowns. Getting a second-round submission over Cody No Love Garbrandt, and now a unanimous decision over Marlon Chito Vera August of this year. He's fought twice at bantamweight this year, won every fight that he's had at bantamweight. He knocked down Chito Vera and had him hurt. Looks every bit a guy that could contend for the bantamweight title, and I think that the UFC would jump at the chance to give him that opportunity. And with this win, it could very well happen, because all 3 wins so far at bantamweight have been against big and recognizable names. And so a chance to have another guy who has held 2 UFC belts would be, a fun thing to have. Oh, boy, Davison Figueiredo, what a career already, Not already, he's been around for a good amount of time, and he's, 30? He's going to be 37. Jan. Oh, rough run for him too, like a guy that on any given evening could still be the best bantamweight in the world. Just like Corey Sandhagen. I think of the same class where if you put him against Aljamain Sterling again, if you put him against Sean O'Malley, Merab, he could win those fights. He absolutely could. Jan, beat John Dodson, Jimmy Rivera, Uriah Faber, and then Jose Aldo in his route to the bantamweight title. And so actually kind of an underwhelming run. Like the Aldo win for sure, finishing him in round 5, landing 194 strikes. But like the Faber win got him that. And Uriah Faber at the time must have been, it was 2019. Uriah Faber was like 40 at the time. So sometimes that happens. Like all those guys, Dodson, Rivera, Faber, all well past their prime. Aldo's a magical guy with, qualities you can't really pinpoint with data. We all know that. Anyway, then Jan loses the title to Aljo in that crazy DQ, knee to the head of a grounded opponent situation. Ends up fighting Corey Sandhagen, beats him by unanimous decision. It was what was a very close and competitive fight. Fights for the belt again. Loses this time by split decision to Aljo. He's been on the rough end of some close decisions. He's been on the good end of a couple of them. But then, loses the split decision to Sean O'Malley, a fight that a lot of people think he won. Got outstruck 84-58. He did have 6 takedowns in that fight. Then fights Merab, all the way back in March of last year. I can't believe that's already that long ago. Got outstruck 147-75, 11 takedowns to 1. Bounced back March of this year at UFC 299 on the same card as the O'Malley vs. Cheeto rematch. Beat Song Yadong by unanimous decision, outstriking him 99-86, 2 takedowns to 1. This is another one. All right, I don't have to tell you this, but Davison Figueiredo.
One comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie. Come on.
I can't believe that he's plus 250 as the underdog, really. He's looked phenomenal at bantamweight. He's been in competitive fights for sure. And, against a couple of those guys, I mean, against Garbrandt, like, you're fighting a guy well past his prime. for sure. But Rob Font always shows up. Cheeto always shows up. For Cheeto not to get a ridiculous judge giving him the fight, like he always seems to, that speaks, qualities about Deiveson Figueiredo's transition to bantamweight in and of itself. Figueiredo's look great at bantamweight. And I think that this is going to be a competitive fight. Of course it's going to be. Figueiredo's a threat everywhere. He's another guy whose magic you just can't quantify. He's always looking for, violent means. He's always looking for finishes. Petr Yan is not ever going to be out of danger in this one. But I think, Figueiredo's body type and how rightful of a bantamweight he is could give Yan some matchup problems and at least maybe slow down the boxing and the takedown volume of Petr Yan. So I think Figueiredo plus 250. That's so tempting to sprinkle a little bit on that. It's a good story. That'll be fun. And I think that, this is a closer fight than these odds have it as. I think, ultimately, what's the most likely single outcome is probably Yan. Let's see here. It's probably Yan by decision, right? In the same way that we kind of saw him beat Song Yadong. Just picking him apart as much as you can against Deiveson Figueiredo, boxing, landing, 2 to 4 takedowns, maybe even a little bit more. Yan by decision plus 125. I'm not going method of victory with Figueiredo. Plus 250 is plenty reward. But, the most likely single outcome is that Yan still looks like one of the top 3 bantamweights in the world after this. If Figueiredo wins, for the love of God, give him a bantamweight title shot. It would be a blast. But, if Figueiredo was fighting Corey Sandhagen, I'd probably be saying a lot of the same things. Yan just remains so skilled in these spots. And fighting again, the win over Song Yadong, brought it all back where, Merab does that to people. 11 takedowns, landing as many strikes as he did. That's usually what Petr Yan does. That's what he did to Jose Aldo. But Yan by decision plus 125, I think, is the most reasonable way to go. I could see it being, 70, 80, 90 strikes for Yan to 60, 70, 80 for Figueiredo. Maybe, Yan gets a few takedowns. Figueiredo might get a couple. I think it's going to be this could very well be the most fun fight on the card. I think it could be 5 rounds of fantastic action. Very much looking forward to it. Make yourself an omelet for this main event if you're here in the United States. Oh, I love that main event. Love it. Love that it's going on in Macau. Folks, thank you so much for listening to episode 159 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. Again, follow me on Twitter on RotoBrady for my picks on everything combat sports. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Look out for my MMA DFS value picks article coming out on Friday afternoons. Come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord on Saturday. I think it'll probably have to be more of a Friday night and then, transitioning into Saturday morning if anybody's going to be awake. But come out to the RotoBaller MMA Discord. Let's talk about what you're doing for UFC Macau. After this, we have a 1-week hiatus. There will be the PFL Championships in between. And then we come back for UFC 310. Hopefully, Connor Sloan will be joining us for that. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy these fights and peace.